Hello everybody, this is Surreality here, or Polaris, whatever you like to call me. And as per a request that was made, I am doing a skill tier list for Kurtzpel. Now originally when I was told this, I was like, okay, sure, I'll do one, why not? But I realized it wouldn't really make sense to put Breaker and Slayer skills on the same tier list because they inherently do different things. Like in general with Slayer skills, you are going to be looking for things like more damage, or high burst damage, or just generally high damage, potentially utility, stuff like that. Whereas with Breaker skills, you're probably just looking for high endurance, high break, and that isn't to say that there isn't overlap, so you might want Slayer skills that have high break, and you might want Breaker skills that have high damage and high utility and stuff like that, but I feel like you would probably just see all of the Slayer skills having like they're just two separate things, or at least they should be, because again, all the Slayer skills would overall do more damage than the Breaker skills. But then would that mean I put them higher than the Breaker skills, which all do more break in general compared to the Slayer skills? Like it just wouldn't really make sense. So instead, I'm going to split it up into two parts. What we have here is part one with the Breaker skills, and I will release another video called part two, and that will be on Slayer skills. And I'm going to be going through this list based off on, I'll be going through essentially each breaker and rating the individual skills of that breaker on the list that we have. And then we'll kind of just continue from there. And some skills that I might not know too much about or I haven't really used that often, I might not talk much about them. And in general, to try to speed up the process, I just might not talk about them too much in general. But so for example, our first skill here is stun hit. So stun hit, I think, is actually a must-have skill. Let me just drag all of the ones into where I think they are, as it is. I'll probably put this here. Probably put that there. Yeah, I think this is perfectly fine where it is. Actually, I might move this up there. I think I'm happy with that. Alright, so let's start from the bottom up. So first we have Fragment Strike. There's not much to say here. It's not a terrible skill, don't get me wrong. It has some use, but it's not a great use, because so it is in some sense a projectile. Actually, Kunai Reflex says it's a projectile, and it tries to reflect it, so as if it was a projectile, so yeah, I can count it as a projectile. But unlike skills like Instant Chase, the break actually decreases the further out it goes, so it's kind of like a shotgun. It actually does do decent break up close, but also it misses if you're too close. So it becomes really inconsistent and conditional depending on how close you are to the opponent. There is like a sweet spot where it will do a lot of break, but if you're not in that sweet spot, you're not going to really break anything. And it's a red armor skill, so unlike stun hit, which is basically just a way better version of it, in every possible way, it does way more break. Even at close range, stun hit I think still does more break than Fragment Strike. I'm not too sure, but I'm pretty sure it's the case. And even if not, I think actually stun hit's range as its break, like I think the max range of stun hit still has more break than the max range, or than the equivalent range on Fragment Strike. So generally you're going to be making more out of stun hit anyway. Plus, though Fragment Strike is technically one of the faster skills that Sword has, the projectile still takes time. So the projectile comes out, I think around frame, let me see if I can pull it up here. I have a data sheet, because I always like to keep track of frame data. So yeah, I have Fragment Strike at around 22 frames, which puts it faster than stun hit. Well, kind of. Actually, it might be slower than stun hit now, because I think that they changed stun hit. So each hit on stun hit is, or each swing is actually 2 hits, and the first hit on a stun hit comes out on around frame 22 as well. So maybe it's actually not that much faster, if any amount faster at all. So, but honestly, like the reason I have Fragment Strike in the niche category is, or niche, it's niche, isn't it? It's not niche, it's niche. Sorry. Is because of the fact that it just is so inconsistent compared to all these other skills. It doesn't do as much break consistently either. It's kind of slow. It's easy to dodge. It is good for reading dodges, and I think it's actually kind of good against hammer. And maybe a few other karmas, but it's just it does get beaten up by a lot of stuff, and it's only grounded. It's a grounded projectile. It doesn't have any height at all, so you can actually even like jump over it potentially. And if you actually hit them at the peak of, if you hit an enemy at the peak of the skill, or at the max range, it actually knocks them down instead of stuns them anyway. So it just doesn't really, it's not that great at all. And then we have Storm Slash, which I'm not going to talk too much about, but it is a pretty good skill. Unfortunately, due to combo limit, it has been significantly hindered because you're essentially wasting time where you could be dealing more damage. Not to say that Storm Slash alone doesn't deal that much, doesn't deal good damage, but it takes too long to deal it. Now, it's still good because of the fact that it has really good endurance, really good range, especially if we were just talking about max height males, or even max height females for that matter, this would probably go up to like staple skills category. And maybe even if we were talking about double breaker, I think Storm Slash also goes up. But by itself, like, it's just not that great anymore due to combo limit being a thing, due to the fact that there are certain skills that just still outright beat it, so like a stun hit and stuff like that. Fortitude makes Storm Slash a lot better. Don't get me wrong. In fact, if I were to have Fort Storm as its own thing, I'd probably have it at least in A rank or even S rank for that matter, because of how good it is. Because it's basically an unstoppable force at that point. Like, not even shield counter can break it. Like, it's just that good. But yeah, it also has inconsistencies with shift attack follow up. They increase the dodge distance, and if the enemy is directly above you when you do the dodge attack, it can actually whiff. Due to the tracking, because you roll too far that your dodge attack doesn't actually connect, which is actually kind of an issue. So there was kind of problems with that. But it's definitely still a pretty good skill, but I would say it's optional. Like, there are people who don't run it anymore, and I understand why. Because it's just not necessary. It isn't a neutral tool. It's strictly a combo tool, and it was one of the best synergizing tools, and it's still a really good synergy tool, but again, you don't really need that too much anymore because of combo limit. Like, synergy just isn't as important nowadays, at least in terms of combo. Maybe for Peel it's a different story, but yeah. And then we have our A ranks, which I think they're all obvious. I think Fortitude is great. It's yellow endurance, increases your movement speed as well, so it allows you to kind of run down people. Maybe not fist players, but allows you to run down slayers, especially if they have projectiles, stuff like that. You can run them down. Allows you to do endurance stack, which can be really good for situations where you want to do like a fort leap, a fort stun hit or something like that, and just essentially be unstoppable. You can also parry, quote unquote, this is what they call it, but it's really more like you absorb. You can absorb IC with it if you time it perfectly. Although I feel like it's more consistent now than it was back then, but you can still do it. But sometimes the server doesn't let you, even when you timed it perfectly right. But then we also have Leap and Land Demo. I still don't think Leap is that bad, especially since they increased the endurance on Leap. You can actually leap into a GR and still get out, I think, without burning your shift, which is kind of crazy. So it makes Leap a lot safer, and of course, if you hit somebody, you basically have no end lag now, and you can go into literally any skill immediately after, which is nice. And Land Demo is essentially kind of does the same job as Leap. It has slightly less break, I think, individually speaking, and it has less armor, but it's safer because you're from a further distance. This Land Demo also actually gets buffed from Ult 2, which I didn't know. It actually increases the distance that you can use Land Demo from, which is also nice. And in general, it's just a really safe skill. It's not as easy to combo into, I think. I mean, it's easy to combo into the first hit. It's not easy to combo into the second hit, because sometimes you lift them too high that the second explosion doesn't hit. That's actually a result of hit stop being a thing. When there was no hit stop on skills, Land Demo connected perfectly fine. Yeah, unfortunately that's not the case anymore. But these are all still really good staple skills that you can use now. Some people call it like the triple neutral if you want. These are really good. Purple armor skills, again, Leap and Land Demo are both purple armor. Decently high break, pretty safe skills. I mean, again, leap is slower. They are kind of slow, so that they do lose in the speed category, but they're safe, high endurance skills, and they just offer a lot. Like, you can use leap to move a combo from one location to another if you need to do some counter peeling. You can also just use it to hard read somebody who has no shift, punish somebody who has no shift and is using a skill, or is using a skill with just general end lag. You can use it to even leap on yourself to hit the opponent or the other enemy if they're trying to peel you. So it's like, again, another anti-peel scenario. But there's just so many scenarios that leap's useful for. Again, it is still slow though, so it does suffer a lot from being able to be countered easily, because you can easily just react or dodge or roll out of the way. It's not that great at neutral. It's good when there's no shifts, but otherwise it's really bad. And especially against karmas like shield, it's even worse. And then land demo, I think, is, again, it's a lot safer, but it doesn't have quite as high endurance. It is faster, does less break though, but you can do it 2 times. So that's kind of nice. Also, I don't actually have them ordered in the row, so I don't have like Fortitude better than leap, better than land demo. I just kind of have them in here. I might order them, but I'm not too sure. Stun hit, I mean, I don't really know. There's not much to say. Yes, it's red armor, but it's fast enough. If the frame data is correct, saying that it's around 22 frames, that's actually really fast. It's faster than the other stun skills. I just wasn't too sure if they changed how it works, but it seems like the first swing actually still has a decent amount of break, and then the second swing has even more or something like that. I don't really know. But there's 2 hits on each swing. They both have a different amount of break. And the stun doesn't actually kick in until the second hit, and it just stuns for so long. Like, in comparison to all the other stun skills outside of Crusade, it stuns for so long. And unlike Crusade, it actually just does more break. Like, it does so much break, and if you have 4 and you have enough mana to double cast, it basically does like an absurd amount. Like, you just can do anything you want with it, basically. And you can win trades with it, so even if you get broken, as long as the stun part connects, you basically win. Because you can, like, get knocked down, tech, and still have enough time, and you could fucking like grab yourself something to eat and still have enough time to fucking pick up the opponent with stun hit. Like, it's just so incredibly powerful, so good. Sometimes it tracks dodges insanely well, especially if you have a really bad dodge like hammer or something like that. It's very meaty. Again, it can be double casted, which can frame trap people. There's just so much you can do with it. It's actually absurd. It is one of the best skills in the game, which is why I have it so high. Alright, so let us move on to Fist. So let's first, where would I put the Fist skills? Probably put this here. Definitely put that there. Probably put that there. Definitely put that there. I'd probably put this up here as well. I don't know if I'd put it on S rank though. Probably won't. And I'd probably put this here. I don't actually think Whirlwind is as niche as Fragment Strike though. I'd probably put on the same level as Whirlwind. Yeah, alright, so I think I'm happy with this. Yeah, so again, we'll start from the bottom. Whirlwind and Wild Flurry, they're both kind of, they're optional skills. You can run them if you really, really want to. Kind of up to your preference if that's just how you like to play the game. But they do have obvious like drawbacks. I think specifically like Whirlwind's really slow now. I mean, it's still like kind of fast. I think, what's the frame data for that now? The frame data for the new Whirlwind is you start moving on frame 18. And you can grab as early as that 18th frame, or as late as like the, oh wait, no, you grab on the 25th frame. So yeah, it's kind of ish slow, but anything between 20 and 30 frames is still like decent speed. It's just not insanely fast. It used to be like 9 to 10 frames, now it's like 25, so Yeah, or 20 to 25 frames, so it's like double now, which is kind of not great. But it's still not like a terrible skill. It's still a grab skill, which is always going to be good. Although actually grab skills in general were kind of nerfed. So actually, you know what? Hold on, I'm gonna put these down actually, because I forgot. Grab skills are all generally kind of nerfed due to combo limit because the combo limit still ticks up while you have it, so you can like build up. I remember when combo limit first was released, you do a reckless charge and it literally built them to like 40% combo limit. It's no longer the case, but I think it's still at least like 10 to 15% that you just miss out on dealing damage when you grab them. So, and again, it's slow. It's very reactable. It's more easy to punish, by the way, than like reckless charge. So if you whiff, it's super easy to punish. Whereas with reckless charge, you can shift. You have, I think, more opportunities to shift out when you do a reckless charge and it misses. So there is that. And then of course, again, so reckless charge I think is reckless charge and wild flurry I do think are kind of more optional. Although I will say I think a lot of people do run reckless charge, but the reason it's kind of optional is because it still has inconsistency issues. It is faster than Whirlwind though, so that is notable. But it still is kind of nerfed due to combo limit. You can't shift out anymore, so you can be more easily interrupted if you do happen to get hit by anything. And again, these are just yellow armor skills, so they can get beaten by like a decent amount. Basically every single skill up here except for IC actually can beat them. So yeah. And Wild Flurry, it's purple. It's actually got really good endurance. But it's not great. It actually doesn't do that good break, unfortunately, which is why it's kind of down here. It's basically the fist version of Storm Slash to some extent, except actually it is because you have to follow up with a shift attack anyway, so you're forced to follow up with a shift, which sometimes doesn't track at all and kind of goes in weird directions. But yeah, it also just isn't that high break. You don't really use it for combos. Its synergy isn't as good as something like Storm Slash. But it's still not like a bad skill. Like, yeah, it's just if you want it, you can do it. And with ult 2, fist ult 2 does make it a lot better. Like, it's hard to contest. And if you burn somebody's shift or something and you use it, like, you can use it to tank hits. Like, it's a pretty good tank tool because you do move faster, I think, than you would in Storm Slash or something like that. Like, it's definitely not like a bad skill. It's fast. The first hit actually comes out pretty fast. It's a fast move. It's purple. You can burn shifts really easily, but you still also kind of lose to every single skill above here, except for, well, I guess you don't lose to Fortitude or IC. But it is still kind of more of a preference skill if you really want it. And then we have the staple skills. So I think IC and Ultimate Heat are pretty good staple skills. IC is pretty good. I know it does less break now. It doesn't break a lot of the skills, even below it. Like, it doesn't break a lot of the skills below it on tier list. But it's so safe, and it's a projectile that leads to an instant combo starter. And if you jump cancel it, it's basically unpunishable because you have no end lag when you hit the ground. So you can even do like crazy shit where you tab, chase, use a skill and chase or something like that. Like, it's crazy some of the stuff you can do with it, and it's just so safe. It's actually still pretty fast. Projectile comes out around frame 15, which makes it one of the fastest projectiles in the game, at least for a breaker. And again, it leads to an instant combo starter. Doesn't do that much damage or break, sure, but it's just so good to have as part of your kit. Even better if you're a female, because Ultimate Heat, unfortunately not so great for females. Amazing for males though, because holy shit, the hitbox on this is so BS if you're tall and you're a male. It is an insanely long hitbox. I actually think it's longer than stun hits hitbox, which is already pretty long, and that uses a fucking great sword, or even like a great sword. I don't even know what you would call that. It's just insane. It's so incredibly big. And it's not as good as stun hit because, for one, you can't double cast it, so it doesn't actually do as much break as stun hit. It potentially is a little bit slower than stun hit. But also it just doesn't stun for as long as the duration, so it's easier to actually trade with Ultimate Heat and still be fine. You also have less time to actually catch the person, so if there's any input lag at all or any delay, you can mess up and you can lose that combo immediately, because again, the stun duration is significantly smaller. So there is that, and that's kind of, I think, why it's not quite a S tier, and it's more just a staple skill that you can use. And then, of course, in S tier we have GR. I mean, it's not even a debate. It's a great skill, great for peel, great for combo, great for anti-peel if you are comboing. Actually pretty decent for aerial peel, pretty good for neutral to burn shifts if you need to, or interrupt combos and stuff like that. Like, it's so good. It's very safe skill as well. Decent range. Yes, it can get broken by some things. I think really actually the only thing that can break it are ults and shield counter now, I think. But it's super good. And yeah, now hammer flip can't even break it really that well anymore, so it is pretty good. Alright, so next up we have hammer. So hammer is probably going to look something like this. Yeah. I don't know if I put an S, but I think for now. So this is our first D rank skill. If you run Holy Armor, I guess I should have prefaced by saying that this video is PvP oriented. So if you're watching this expecting PvE skills to be rated, you're coming to the wrong place. This is a terrible skill. And even in PvE, it's a terrible skill. It doesn't do anything right now. It does something your character can do by standing still for 5 seconds. And it costs mana to do it. And it has a cooldown. And it wastes a skill slot. And actually has a 20-second cooldown. So yeah, this is an awful skill. Never run this in PvP. You will actually unfortunately be trolling or throwing the game if you are using this skill, or you will be seriously hindering your ability to play the game, which is already, I mean, the game itself already kind of hinders itself for you, so why even run this skill? Holy Armor. So Holy Armor is slightly better than this. It still has a lot of bad things. You can't combo into it. You cannot. You can use it to peel, but only against projectiles, and only if the wall interrupts the combo in the first place. You can heal inside it now, which is great, but it used to get rid of your stun. Like, if you had a debuff on, like a stun, you could actually get out of ults and combos, so it actually used to be a lot better. But that's not the case anymore, which is kind of unfortunate. And I actually, even though you can heal inside it, I still think it was better that you were able to not heal inside it, but able to get out of stuns. You can now cast it wherever you want. I think it used to just go wherever you currently were, right? Like, I don't think you got to choose where to cast it. So you get to choose where to cast it now, which is nice, but it's still super niche. It's great against. It is actually pretty good against bow. So if you are struggling against bow, by the way, I actually would recommend running Holy Armor, because you can actually stop a lot of stuff from happening. Like, bow, I mean, bow still has a way to bypass it with like Raining Arrow and Binding Arrow, and I think even Spirit Arrow to some extent, but you can stop a lot of other stuff. You can stop bow poke, and now that you can heal inside, you can stop bow poke while healing. Like, it's actually pretty good. You do have to play patient, but it is good against bow and projectile slayers. But again, I wouldn't recommend it all the time, and when you are using Holy Armor, you are missing out on pretty significant damage. And also combo tools and peel tools, and it's just, it is really only for minor peel, because it does increase your defense, you do take less. It's minor peel, but mainly it's just a counter to projectiles and nothing else. Alright, so next we have Holy Cross. So Holy Cross, in my opinion, is still not great. A lot of people still use it. It's still a decent peel tool, but it doesn't break as much as it used to. It is a projectile though, so that does make it nice, especially for aerial peel. But again, it's still kind of slow, and if you miss it, there are ways to counter it. Like, you can still armor through it now. Like, you can, if you try to peel a hammer player who's in the air, they can just Crusade and it won't do anything. Like, even if it hits them, it won't do anything. So yeah. It's you can't really combo into it either. Again, it's mainly just a peel tool. You can interrupt like spells and stuff like that from like projectile characters, so it can be useful against projectile slayers and stuff like that. But again, you're not going to be doing that much damage, not going to be doing that much break. It's kind of, I mean, it serves more, I think, in general than Holy Armor does, just due to the fact that it does do damage at least, and it does do a peel better than Holy Armor does. So that's kind of why I have it higher, but it's still kind of just like if you want to run it, you can. I don't recommend it though. Stable skills though, Giga Swing and Crusade, both really good skills. Giga Swing still probably the highest damage out of all the stun skills. Also pretty fast actually, coming around the same frame as Ultimate Heat. Not quite as ridiculous range as Ultimate Heat or Stun Hit. And it is more punishable on whiff because you're not allowed to shift if you whiff the skill. But again, it still does pretty good damage. Really good combo tool, really good peel tool as well if you get it in if you're close enough to stop the enemy. And it is a high risk tool to use in neutral, but you get so much reward out of it, it's kind of absurd. In Crusade, also really good. It does have end lag that is punishable, but it also has a lot of break. And I think if you manually activate the last hit of it, it does even more break, which is really crazy. Really good stun duration, actually. Giga Swing also suffers from having a low stun duration, but Crusade doesn't. And Crusade's also yellow armor, so it is somewhat safer. It still has end lag though, especially if you connect it with somebody. You do have end lag that you can't get out of, so you can be punished by the opponent or the other person you don't have caught. But it's a really good anti-peel tool if you're in the air and you're afraid you're about to get hit by like an IC, a Holy Cross, Rising Wing maybe, or I don't know, anything in the air. You can just Crusade and move to a different location, kind of similar to like launching somebody and leaping towards it. So it's good for anti-peel, good for peel if you know when to use it. A decent neutral tool, especially if you do the jump version, because you basically have no end lag if you miss. And again, you can use it for combo. Still does decent break, decent speed. It's around 30 frames, so it's faster than leap by a long shot. And it's just a really good skill. Again, though, it's only yellow armor, so it can get beaten by all stun skills. Although I wouldn't recommend contesting it. And if you do use it on the ground, there is a lot of end lag that you can punish. And again, if you hit somebody, it can also be punished. So it's definitely not amazing. It's not quite S tier. It's almost. It also doesn't do that significant damage. And it doesn't do that much break. There are still things that it loses to pretty easily, and you can be caught. Even though, depending on whether you use the skill on the ground, it can lead to different end lag versus if you use it in the air. During the actual midair movement, or during the actual movement of the skill, you are considered airborne. So if you are interrupted at all, like by GR or Hammer Smash or anything that breaks however much armor you have, you're instantly counted as airborne, which is really bad. So that's also kind of a fault. But it's almost at an S tier. It's really close. Honestly, if we went back to like the double Crusade glitch and stuff like that, when Crusade was really safe and took you long distance, it probably would have been S tier. But we do have S tier's Hammer Smash, so I think Hammer Smash is S tier specifically because it is incredibly fast. First hit comes out frame 18. Yes, you can shift during that, but it is a shift checker, because if they don't shift then, they won't get another chance to shift once the second hit comes, because the second hit launches and then the third hit stuns. So if you are not shifting by the first hit, you're kind of done for. And the first and second hit both have really good break. Third hit, not so much. But you can also choose, like, yes, the skill is punishable, similar to Crusade, but you can always guarantee to not be punished by shifting out on that second hit. Like, you don't ever have to fully commit to the third, and there's still a lot of mix-up. And it also has really high endurance. I think it actually has like higher endurance than like Storm Slash and even Wild Flurry. And even if it doesn't, it beats both those skills anyway. And it has still a pretty decent vertical hitbox, really good break. It's honestly basically like if you took Storm Slash or Wild Flurry, gave a skill that, or the Wild Flurry, Storm Slash, Endurance, and then gave it the break of like something like Leap. It's just a super fast skill. Oh yeah, I guess you gave it the speed of like I don't know, IC or something like that. But it's fast, high endurance, really safe. Can use it to combo, can use it to peel. Um, it's just really good. And again, you can burn shifts with it. Um, you can use it to anti-peel. Again, you can use it to combo. You can use it to peel. It's just really good. You can even, again, you can kind of use it to aerial peel as well. It's also really good at hitting multiple opponents, which is also really nice because it does suck them in, which can lead to a lot of team setups. So yeah, it's just a really, really good skill. Definitely maybe not, it does have the disadvantage of not being able to dodge after the third hit, so it might not be as great as GR, but I still think it deserves to be an S tier. Alright, and now we have Scythe skills, so probably put I don't know if I'd put a Scythe skill in S tier, to be honest. Actually, maybe I'll put this down here. Or I think I actually might put these down here. And then I'll put this down here. Yeah, so Scythe has very mediocre skills. So both, I believe Death Hold and Demon Rush, they've been nerfed significantly in terms of their break, as well as I think the actual endurance you get on the skill. They basically don't do any damage, they don't do any break, so why are you using them in the first place? I think to some extent Demon Rush might be slightly more useful because it's a kind of projectile that almost works by itself. But even still, like, why would you use it though when you could be using better skills? Yes, it does lead to some black hole setups or something if you're looking for that, but I don't even know. And then I think Death Hold actually might just be the worst, where, yeah, you can burn people's shifts, but people can tank through it with, like, yellow armor now. I don't even know if it breaks Fortitude anymore, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. But I think you can contest it with, like, WWLMB and then shift out and not have it burn your shift because it never broke you in the first place. And it does significantly less damage. It's just not great. You can use them for combos. You can use both these skills for combos, but for neutral, like, they don't really serve much purpose, in my opinion. They're very niche. You can use them. You can use, like, Death Hold to check on Slayers and stuff like that potentially, but even still, you can even use Demon Rush to that extent, but it's just not great. They don't. They are shadow of their former self, which used to be a lot more powerful. Again, whether it's balanced the way they are is a completely different discussion, but they're not great right now, and a lot of people don't use them anymore. These optional skills we kind of see more usage out of, and the reason I put them into B rank instead of A rank, like, even though they might be the staple skills, they're still not great skills. I kind of just have B rank as the optional category because these are, like, skills that might be good, but that's kind of up to your preference. And these skills still aren't, even though they might be staple skills, they aren't at that same tier where they actually should be. Like, if Scythe had other skills similar to any of the stuff on A rank, then it would be better than the skills that it currently has in B rank. So first off, Dark Mist now always comes out at the same time. It's still a second shift, sure, but you will get punished by this skill and 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 this skill. Like 90% of the skills above it are going to punish it very easily because it always comes out at the same time. So as long as you get used to what the timing is for when they come out of Dark Mist, you're basically guaranteed to punish. And it can't really be used for combos. Kind of can, but not really. And it doesn't do that much break anymore. They nerfed it significantly, so it's not really that great for peeling. But again, it does enhance your evasiveness to some extent. Still offers you, it still has purple endurance, which is nice. But again, it's not a great skill in my opinion. I might even think about moving it to niche, but I think because of its endurance at least, and because of the fact that it does have iframes on it, it does make it better, especially for potentially like dodging certain abilities. If you do think that they're going to come out, and having a second dodge is just always a nice thing, even if it's a very predictable second dodge. So that's kind of why I have it in the B rank category. Rising Wings also really high break, decent endurance, kind of similar to something like Crusade, but I'd argue even more unsafe than Crusade. Because unlike Crusade, where you can use it in the air and make it basically perfectly safe if you just jump and hover a little bit above the ground, Rising Wing 100% can be punished. Now, to its extent, I think Rising Wing is easier to aim than Crusade because Rising Wing depends on where your camera is locating, so you can read shifts really well with Rising Wing. Like, Rising Wing is really good for reading people who you think are going to dodge or something, or who you think are going to use a skill that like is slow or doesn't have much endurance. And it can break a lot. It actually has a really high break. But it also has a lot of inconsistencies where sometimes it doesn't lift people up. Even people who are like standing still, like it doesn't even lift them up. Or if they're moving and they don't have any endurance, it still doesn't lift them up. Um, and if you miss at all, like all it takes is a jump LMB to break you because they got rid of the endurance after or on like the last 10 frames of the skill or something. So it is super risky skill. It is like a high risk high reward skill, kind of similar to Giga Swing, but even more risky than Giga Swing. And the reward is, in my opinion, not as good as Giga Swing because I don't really think it deals as much damage nor as much break. So it's super risky, and I think because of how risky it is and how inconsistent it is, I don't quite have it at A because of that. And Shadow Slash, why I have it down here, I mean, it's because they nerfed it significantly. It loses to a lot of skills that it used to be able to at least contest or beat. It basically just outright loses to them. It still has really decent range, and it's still a decent neutral tool and decent combo tool. Still looks pretty cool. Probably one of the cooler looking Scythe skills. And it has really easy follow-up. I actually think that they decreased the end lag on it again, so you can do like a lot off of it now. But again, it doesn't have much endurance, doesn't have much break. Like, it's the equivalent to what you would think Scythe's version of stun hit would be, except it doesn't stun, it doesn't do nearly as much break as stun hit, and it's a lot slower and can be actually if you use stun hit or ultimate heat or Giga Swing or Crusade or land demo or leap or GR, basic again like 90% of the skills above it at the same time as you use Shadow Slash, you're just gonna lose. Also Shadow Slash, again, it can be used to peel, but it doesn't really, since it has reduced break, it's not really that great at doing it, so it ends up kind of just being more of like a optional neutral option and a combo tool and nothing else really. So that's kind of why it's there. But at least Scythe does have access to Soul Taker, which used to actually be considered one of the worst skills that Scythe had at launch because it basically did nothing. And now it's one of the best because it has really good air peel, it's got decent ground peel, it is super safe because you can shift out while still having the hitbox active. It has a lot of utility because you can suck people in, you can suck in ults, you can do a lot of crazy shit with it. And it still does a decent amount of break. Also leads to a combo starter if they have no shift and they're not prepared for it. And you can also use it in a combo as well. So those are all nice things. It doesn't quite make it into S rank though because it still loses to a lot. So it does do a decent amount of break, but not a lot. And it still takes time for that break to come out. And so if you use a skill like, and even if you get broken first, if you shift and then use a skill again, because you're probably going to get sucked in again, you can actually just win the trade. Now, the Scythe can shift after you shift to then get away, but it ends up just resetting neutral. I mean, sure, the Scythe has an advantage, but they still don't get anything. You can just run away. But there are still many ways to contest the skill. It doesn't guarantee anything. It's kind of like a worse GR, in my opinion, where it has a decent radius. It can be used to air peel and ground peel just like GR can. It can be used as a neutral tool to burn shifts as well, just like GR can. But it doesn't do nearly as much break as GR. It's not quite as safe as GR is, although you can shift out, I guess. Although if you do shift out, you are potentially going to get hit because again, Scythe shift is super predictable with what you can do out of it. So they can just wait for you to get out of the shift and then punish you. So, but again, it is pretty fast. It's one of the fastest Scythe skills. One of the highest endurance, one of the safest. And again, it just has so much utility behind it that it kind of just puts it into the A tier. And again, because of like the versatility of the skill, I think it deserves to be put in A tier at least. Alright, so now we have Shield. So Shield, let's see, we have... So this is... What is this skill called again? I don't know. It's the fucking Shield Bash skill. I'll put it here. I'll put this here as well. Although, to be honest, I'd put this here. I'm going to put it there. I know some people may disagree with me on that, but I'll put that there. I think Shield Pull is a pretty stable skill. I'm only going to put counter at A2 to be honest. I'll put that there, and I'll put this... God, I don't even know. I might be more inclined to put this here as well. This might be some controversial takes. But hopefully my explanations will help with that. So this is what Iron Will, I think. Iron Will is a buff that makes you take 0 damage for 2 seconds, which sounds good on paper until you realize you need to be insanely close to your teammate to actually have that happen. And you have some end lag when you cast it, and it's only red armor. So you can actually immediately be broken if people catch you doing that. Or at the very least, they can approach you, force you to shift, and then you're basically forced to use another skill. And almost every single one of your skills is going to lose except for counter. So it's not a great skill. And again, it only decreases damage for 0 seconds. And just because of how combo limit happens right now, like you're probably still going to end up doing max damage anyway. You're still going to trigger combo limit and deal probably around 15k regardless of whether Iron Will comes out or not. Like I've had people use Iron Will on me when I'm doing a combo, and it didn't really change how much damage I did during that combo. It just made it last a little bit longer, 2 seconds longer, and that's it. And again, they have to be so close. They have to actually commit to doing this skill. And again, it gets put on a 20-second cooldown where it offers literally no offensive utility. It's only defensive utility. And it doesn't actually peel, by the way, it just stops damage. So it doesn't actually stop the combo, it just stops the damage for 2 seconds. I don't think that's great. You're still going to lose a lot. Chances are you're still going to lose just as much as you were going to anyway. In fact, I'd argue that since it extends the combo, I mean, I guess it gives them more time to peel, but also you have end lag when you use the skill, so you can still be punished. Like, and again, you have to be so close that the enemy teammate is probably already there ready to stop you, and if you use that skill, they're just going to stun hit you immediately and bash your head in and get a catch. I don't know. You can be beat by an IC, so not great. Not a great skill in my opinion. That's kind of why I have it in the Y category. I would say it's definitely a little bit better than like Sanctuary, but it's still not great. And then we have, I don't know, what is it called? Shield Rush? Something like that. I don't remember. Actually, maybe I have it here. Do I have it here? Charge. Oh, it's just called Charge. Okay. I do have it here. So Charge, it's, on paper, it's actually not too bad. It's a frame 19 move, which is actually kind of fast. It's decently fast. Does a decent amount of break, especially on the first hit that connects the opponent. But the problem is you can't do anything during it. It's also only red armor, so you could argue that it's kind of similar to like stun hit, where it's like, oh, it's fast, it's red, it does a lot of break, except unlike them, it doesn't stun, and you basically can't combo off of it, and you can't do anything off of it. It's so, I mean, it's basically unpunishable. It's really hard to punish, but it's kind of just an interruption tool. It's just like, hey, everybody back off, let's reset neutral. And then that's about it. And actually, you can be caught off of it if you know the timing for it. There is some end lag, which if the person using Charge isn't ready for, I think you can shift out during it. But if they're not ready for it, and they don't even know when their shield or when their charge is going to end, you can be immediately picked up. And again, like unless you have the enemy in a corner, you're probably not gonna get a combo off of it. Like it's not a great skill. It really isn't. It suffers a lot, and you need to adjust your camera to adjust where it's going. It's not great, and it still loses to a lot of things, actually. It gets broken really easily. I think it loses to Icy. So, yeah, not great. And then in the optional B rank, we have Battle Cry and Shield Throw. And Shield Throw might be a little confusing. People would probably generally put that higher, but I think I'll explain why. But first, let's go to Battle Cry. So Battle Cry, also, some people think it's a pretty good skill. Purple, yeah, it's a purple skill. You can walk around it while doing it. It does decent amount of break. But again, here are the problems where it only deals a decent amount of break. It can't actually break a hammer smash, despite the fact that it takes pretty long for all the hits to come out. And you're not even allowed to shift until the second wave of it comes out. And by the way, the first hit takes all, like, at most, and this is the first hit, and each wave has like 3 hits. And I didn't actually count the frame data between each hit, but the first wave doesn't come out until around like frame 28 or 29. So that basically means any skill that comes out before that will beat it. In fact, I actually think you can react to Battle Cry with a skill like Stun Hit or Ultimate Heat, and you will win. In fact, Ultimate Heat, especially if you're a tall male, will outrange a Battle Cry. I think even Stun Hit will outrange a Battle Cry if you're tall enough. Even probably Giga Swing to some extent. Like, there are just so many things. Yeah, you think you can Crusade it. Like, it just loses to a lot. Like, even if you use it for the purpose of interruption, it doesn't interrupt because, like, if you see somebody's shift and you're gonna Battle Cry them to try to burn their shift again or to try to catch them if they just burn their shift, like they can just use the skill and win, and then you're caught. And again, it can be used for some aerial peel, but honestly, its aerial height, it's not great. I think even Hammer Smash might have a bigger aerial height. I don't know. Its overall radius is not very big. Again, it takes a long time for it to deal any break. And again, it just loses to a lot of red skills, yellow skills, and purple skills. Again, it can be kind of good for neutral because you can walk around, so it gives you some mobility while having armor, which is nice. And it can be used to burn shifts as well as to combo, and to some extent you can peel some things, but it's still not great, and it loses to a lot. But it's still, like, it's not a bad skill. That's why I have it in B rank, because it still has its uses. It's still high armor. It's still kind of safe because you can shift out by the second wave, but assuming that they use a skill before that, you're kind of out of luck. And it can be used kind of as anti-peel when you're in a combo, because again, it is purple armor and it kind of prevents people from coming in on you. But yeah, it's still not great. And then we have Shield Throw. So Shield Throw is actually pretty good, but I think as time has gone on, and maybe because they did nerf the projectile speed, it is very easy to essentially negate Shield Throw. All you have to do to negate a Shield Throw in the current version of the game is WWLMB, get hit by the Shield Throw, and then dodge. And congratulations, that Shield Throw is now gone. You don't have to worry about it, and it's on a 20-second cooldown. Like, I've seen so many people just beat Shield Throw, so Icy beats Shield Throw. Icy, in my opinion, actually, a lot of people used to think Shield Throw is the better version of Icy. I disagree with that sentiment now. I think Icy is the better version of Shield Throw because it does basically as much break, considering Shield Throw is so reactable. Like, once you get hit by the first hit, it is so reactable to dodge, and then you take no further hits, and it doesn't break you at all. Now, it does technically still do more break than Icy, but it takes longer to do it, and again, if you dodge after the second hit, or, I mean, obviously if you dodge the first, but if you dodge after the first hit, or potentially the second, depending on what you have, you just don't get broken. You don't get broken. And it's also harder to combo off of because sometimes it sends the enemy at an insane trajectory that's just impossible to follow up on. So it's just more inconsistent. And again, sometimes the Shield Throw does have weird targeting, although I will say the targeting is better than IC. It just doesn't lead to as much. It's better at aerial peel than IC is, for sure, because of the fact that it tracks better. But also its frame data is where it comes out. I think I have around 24, and that's at the earliest. So assuming every frame the projectile travels a certain amount of distance, it might take up to like even 30 frames before it hits anybody. And it just loses to a lot. And even you can shift after you throw it to try to make it safe, but if you have an IC and a shield throw activate at the same time, even if you were to try to shift your own, you'd probably still lose because the IC just comes out way faster. Especially if they do a drop down IC, it's way faster and way safer. So unfortunately, it just loses a lot, and especially like there's sometimes where even if you hit the opponent, if they use a skill like Crusade or something and they hit you with Crusade, the shield throw, like they go so fast and they move so fast that the shield throw doesn't actually track them correctly, and then it just doesn't break them. Same thing for skills like Libra and stuff like that. If you shield throw it, like sometimes all 3 hits won't connect. And sometimes all 3 hits when they disperse and they hit multiple people, sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes you don't want that to happen because you can't break either now because you only dealt a little bit of break to each person. Or maybe you knocked both of them down and you were expecting it to hit the person 3 times. Like, it's just very inconsistent. And it actually, I think, ends up being more detrimental to the shield player than it is beneficial. But it's still a good skill. That's why I have it in B rank. Same for Battle Cry or War Cry. Then we have staple skills. So we have Shield Pull. So Shield Pull is interesting. So Shield Pull is really, really wide range, first of all. And it is not the best frame data wise. Oh, actually, no, it hits as early as frame 22. So it is actually faster than Shield Throw. It's faster than Shield Throw. It's not quite as safe as Shield Throw, I think, because you do have to commit more. There's less frames where you're allowed to shift out. Like, I think you have to wait till you pull it back before you're allowed to shift. But it doesn't really matter anyway, because Shield Throw basically auto peels, because even if you get interrupted, the skill basically comes out anyway. So if you get like hit by like an IC or something, like pretty early on into the skill, or like even a stun hit, although you probably still lose just because of how the duration is. But if you get like ultimate heat or something, like the shield throw can just come back. Like even if they shift, the shield throw has such a or shield pull, sorry, has such a wide range that when it comes back, it can still hit the person, and then they basically lose neutral. And then even in some cases, you actually can convert off of it depending on how late they get hit by it. And it's just very, very good for peeling yourself. It's a very safe skill despite the fact that you can't shift out of it. Like it just auto peels yourself pretty well. It also has pretty good range, really good for reading dodges, pretty safe due to its range. And I think it actually does do a pretty decent amount of break. I think it might do more break than shield throw. If not, it does the same break faster than shield throw does it and more consistently than shield throw does it. It still does have weaknesses. Like if you use the skill against like a wall or a corner, it doesn't actually like knock down the opponent and then lift them up again. Like it has weird interactions with the wall where it gets like blocked or something. And I think also if you're just too close, like the first hit just doesn't hit them and then they're able to shift out and stuff like that. And if you get slowed down, I think it also ruins the skill. Like if you get hit by a hammer smash, it slows down your action speed, so it kind of ruins the skill as well. But overall, it's still a pretty good skill. It is still red armor though, so that's kind of unfortunate. Again, the reason I don't have this at S tier is because it's not 100% safe. It can be beaten. I actually think when I mentioned the stun hit trade, you still lose that battle 100%. I think you lose to a lot, like any purple armor skill, you don't do anything to. You essentially just tickle them. So it doesn't really do anything to them. It doesn't really do that much to yellow skills either for the most part until the pullback comes. But still really good for dodge reading and just a good neutral tool. It can be used as a ground peel tool as well. Not so much an air peel tool. Shield throw probably covers for that. But in general, I think it kind of does the same job as shield throw on the ground, at least a little bit better than shield throw does. And then we have counter. So counter, another controversial one. Probably a lot of people might say no, that should be an S tier skill. And I think when it first came out, it was 100% an S tier skill. When they first nerfed it, it probably still was an S tier skill. But nowadays, maybe not so much. Because there's like this weird, I call it a power creep. It's not really power creep. It's more just inconsistencies which kind of lead to a power creep for other karmas. Where shield just loses out. Like if your counters aren't hitting, your whole, like shield is basically your whole entire kit. Or a lot of, don't want to say your whole entire kit, but a lot of your kit revolves around counter if you're using it. And if it's not connecting when it should be, since again most of your kit revolves around it, if if most of your kit revolves around something that isn't working, there's a major problem there. And unfortunately, I've had the privilege of having shield counters connect multiple times and it just not hit people. Sometimes I even get hit. I counter a projectile to try to hit the opponent who's already next to me, and it doesn't target the person next to me. And there's just so many inconsistencies with it that it's really, really sad. Now, the reason I still have it up here at A tier is because it still does an amazing amount of break. You can still combo off of it, although it is much harder, and depending on where the opponent is, sometimes it's just not even useful. And also there's like weird moments where if the person's already moving through you when the counter activates, they get sent behind you, so you have to be ready for that. And sometimes they just get sent at unexpected angles, and again, sometimes it misses. Sometimes it does the fake counter where it says that it activated it, but then it actually didn't. And again, it's just a super high risk move, and the reward isn't as good for the risk that it has. So again, it is something that you have to be careful of. It is still a really good skill, don't get me wrong. All of the skills in A tier are really good, and Shield being one of the highest breaking skills in the game, even able to break a GR, or even a Fort Storm. Actually, no, it doesn't break a Fort Storm, but it does break a GR. It's kind of insane, and it has an insane amount of endurance as well. You can actually tank ult 2s with shield counter alone. But again, it is a high risk, high reward skill. I think due to the nerfs, that's why I have it at A tier. It's close to S, but it's just not quite there because of its inconsistencies, and just its overall fact that shield is very reliant on it when you have it. Like, again, you only get to equip 3 skills, so 1/3 of it, of your kit, relies on it, and it's very reactionary based skill. And again, if you're missing them at all, like, that's kind of just it. Like, you're kind of just losing if that's the case. And yeah, so that's probably about it for my tier list. I don't think I'm really going to move anything around. I don't really feel like ordering the rows. The video's already insanely long, almost an hour long. Holy fucking shit. But thank you guys for watching if you did somehow watch this. And stay tuned for part 2, where I'm going to fucking go through the hellhole of rating Slayer skills somehow. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching. Bye.